This is NewsDesk. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Jason Miller, here today with Dr. David Summers, as usual, director of the Summers Institute of Foreign Affairs. We have something special today at the end of our show. We have a special performance of music and dance by the group Mideast by Midwest. Lead singer and keyboardist Hannah Bettner, and dancing by Iraze. I think you'll enjoy that. They're finalists, by the way, for the MAMA Award. That stands for Madison Area Music Association, and they are in the world music category. We'll be discussing this with Hannah at the end of the dancing later on. But let's get to the news now. A topic in the news this last week is John Edwards, the senator from North Carolina who ran for president a campaign or two ago. He was indicted in North Carolina this week on 6 counts, which include conspiracy, taking illegal campaign contributions, and making false statements. Each count carries a sentence up to 5 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. He's looking at 30 years in prison and more than $1 million.
Yes, he is, but you know, he's one of the best trial lawyers in the country, and he's having this litigated in his home state of North Carolina, where he's a native son and a poor boy who has managed through his own wit to rise very high. He's held in pretty high esteem, even though he treated his wife rather shabbily, right, to say the least, and was part of a huge, at least hugely covered sex scandal. The sad thing is, not that he's going to have perhaps 30 years, I doubt if he's going to be convicted at all of anything, but that it's another nail in the coffin of probity of American public officials. Young people are turned off by this, very much so. Not so much that it's a sex scandal, but more so the cover-up and the lying and the cheating and the diversion of public funds, even if it turns out to be even somewhat legal. It just makes people lose confidence in their leaders. He could have been either vice president very easily, or president of the United States.
It's a classic case, you know, of what we come across lately. Like you say, he's a handsome, smooth-talking guy who turns out to be just another
sleazebag.
Yeah, exactly. Isn't that something? And he must be awful wealthy, you know. They mentioned that he has a 10,000 square foot house. That's a mansion.
The money did not really come from public corruption like other public officials. That came from his great success as trial lawyer.
Look how much trouble they're giving Romney, because he made his money off of the hardship of others, supposedly by buying companies, stripping them of assets and whatnot. But a trial attorney that does these slip and falls or whatever it is.
But from his point of view, he's defending the little guy, and that's the way he sells it. And he's defending those poor folks who have no one else to step up and plead their case at the bar of justice.
Well, let's see, just for our viewers, just what all the hoopla is about. Okay, the two sides are the prosecutors, those that are anti-Edwards. They say that Edwards was aware of the payments from wealthy donors, that the money was meant to influence the federal election. The defense says that the donors' payments were not meant as political contributions, but rather just as personal gifts to a friend.
Right, and this, frankly, there's no record of such a case, I think, being successfully prosecuted by the government in the past. The chances that he's going to get off are really very high, I think. But he will, again, have a very tarnished reputation.
Well, yeah, I'm sure he doesn't plan to run for public office after this.
I would suppose not, although, you know, others did. Huey Long did. And if you look at President Clinton, although he's not going to run for office, frankly, if he did,
Yeah.
I'll bet you he'd be reelected.
Maybe so. It's popular. That's right. Good point. Now, I'll tell you something else that came out of this. It's fascinating. I don't know if you remember, but Andrew Young was working in Edwards' campaign at the time.
Right. Not the Andrew Young. This is another Andrew Young.
Is it?
It's not the guy who was mayor of Atlanta and ambassador to the United Nations. No. I thought as much as well. And indeed, he bears a passing resemblance to that Andrew Young.
Right.
He's much younger. It's another Andrew Young.
All right.
Right.
But either way, this is very interesting. What this guy did was he pocketed a lot of money. It says
He
here.
used it to build his house.
Yeah. It says here that some of this
1.8 million.
some of this cash that that Edwards received went to Hunter, the mother of Edwards' child.
Not much.
But most of it landed in the pockets of Andrew Young and his wife, and they used it to pay for a new home, buy jewelry, electronics, and vacations.
The home cost $1.8 million.
Amazing! Can you imagine? And now Andrew Young, Andrew Young is expected to testify for the prosecution
Against Edwards.
against Edwards. He also,
He's already done that.
Andrew Young has wrote a tell-all book about Edwards' failed presidential run, and he's also contacted 3 of the witnesses in this case to discuss their testimony. It was kind of weird. It's like he's a representative of the prosecution.
Amazing.
Yeah, boy, you talk about double cross. My gosh.
Exactly.
All right, well.
Well, but you see what he's getting for this clearly is they're not going to prosecute him. In other words, I'll bet they did a plea deal.
Well, they
saying, okay, fella, you testify against Edwards, and we'll let you off scot-free.
Well, it says that here, actually.
Oh, it does. Well, okay.
Andrew Young, who was granted immunity by the government, is expected to testify.
Sure.
All right, so there we are. Something interesting. Google executives Larry Page and Eric Schmidt, plus filmmaker James Cameron, are among those bankrolling a venture to survey and eventually extract precious metals and rare minerals from asteroids that orbit near Earth. They're planning to take these balls of rock that are outside of Earth's orbit and mine them for platinum, gold, titanium, or whatever metals or materials that we want. And just to give you an idea, it says here a 98-foot asteroid can hold as much as $25 to $50 billion worth of platinum.
Yes, and it's a very interesting scientific kind of operation. But I gather that they're doing it not for the sake of science or humanity, but just to gobble up more billions of bucks. Frankly, it does strike me as a bit much that these guys who already have more money than they could possibly spend in many lifetimes are now trying to make far more out of this. Now, that's probably maybe not a very generous assessment of this. It's an amazingly interesting project, and let's hope it's successful.
Well, there's the other side of it, too. Does it help planet Earth? Does it help the general population of Earth?
I don't see how.
Well, it's bound to make the price of rare metals cheaper, more affordable.
You're right. Let us hope so.
Makes for less expensive products, so everybody lives better.
We could have a lot of platinum for ourselves.
Well, there's more than just platinum. You know, copper.
Oh, I see. Yes, yes. Well, you know,
rare earth.
Okay.
All kinds of whatever.
I wish them success.
Okay. All right. So then next is Sudan. That's been in the news lately. Now we have Sudan that's split into South Sudan and regular Sudan. Now, when they were one country, they were having years of civil war, which were some of the longest lasting. in Africa. Now that they're two separate countries, they're fighting traditional border wars with each other.
Well, the Sudanese are really instigating this. That is to say,
The northern Sudanese.
government of North Sudan, because all the oil is in South Sudan, but the exporting facilities are in the north, and so they want to control more of the oil, and they have an army, a good army, at least better than the South Sudanese army. Now, the trouble is, the poor Chinese, or of course, I wouldn't call them poor, but anyway, the Chinese who are bankrolling this whole petroleum operation are caught in the middle. I can't say that I'm exactly sad about that.
Well, but now the South Sudanese say this. They say, look, we're now a separate country. When we weren't, and we were just fighting a guerrilla war against the North, we held our own.
Right.
So the fact that we now have many more men under arms, and we are a separate country, it shouldn't be a problem to fight the North.
Shouldn't be.
That's what they
Shouldn't
say. Also, you were saying that the oil's in the South, but
be. Most of it.
but some of it must be over the border because the South went and nabbed that part.
The North went and nabbed that part.
No, I thought it was the South that nabbed it.
It's in dispute.
I
Frankly.
see.
It's in dispute. The borders, the frontier is not so clearly delineated, and each side wants the most oil it can get its mitts on.
Yeah. By the way, the South has a long-term plan to not need the North's
Right.
the pipeline to the North.
Pipeline.
They're going to take the pipeline over to
Sure.
Kenya or
Right, makes sense.
Eritrea or one of those
Right,
places.
makes sense.
All right. Next, good news for us.
Ah,
The gap between male and female life expectancy is closing, and men could catch up by the year 2030.
oh, perfect. I hope that in the year of 2030 I will see that.
Well.
Nicely put. Right.
Now, the difference between the sexes peaked at nearly 6 years in the 1970s. Women were living, on average, 6 years longer. Life expectancy is going up all around for both sexes, but the rates for men are rising faster. And the reason they say is because men are living a healthier lifestyle.
Yeah, and women now, more women are smoking than ever before, for example.
Right.
Right.
Well, at one point, 80% of men...
Equality is equality, after all.
Well, sure. But at one point, 80% of men were smokers.
Right.
And it's not just that. I mean, I don't know, men, I guess more of them now are gone off to a vegetarian diet or some more than before, where it was pretty classic meat, potatoes, and pizza and beer.
It seems that many of both sexes are living a rather similar type lifestyle. Therefore, the results tend to be similar.
One more factor, they say that back before the 70s or so, a large percentage of men worked in mining and manufacturing and whatnot that were relatively unhealthy
And those
occupations.
businesses, unfortunately for the country, anyway, those industries have died.
Well, just less men
And not
are involved.
right, fewer men, yes.
All right, we have an abbreviated news show today because of our entertainment.
Oh my.
So this